Welcome to the Treasury Whisperers Talkcast podcast, your go-to source for insightful interviews and dynamic panel discussions in the worlds of treasury, banking, payments, fintech, and much more. Here now is your host, the Treasury Whisperer, Seth Marlowe. Hello, Whisperees. Joining me today in the Whisperer studio is Todd Weiden. Todd is the CEO and founder of Saltyco, a growth, talent, and advisory-oriented consulting firm maniacally focused on ensuring banks and credit unions are winning on behalf of those that they serve. Before starting Saltyco, Todd held senior transformation roles at Synovus and SunTrust, focusing on leadership, organizational change, execution, and growth. He started his career with 5 years at Wachovia. Todd is also the founder of LeadSpire, a privately vetted community built for leaders and executives in the banking and credit union industry. Todd, welcome to the Treasury Whisperers Talkcast podcast.
Hey, Seth, appreciate you having me on. I don't know who wrote that intro, but it sounded pretty accurate. So I'm going to just go with it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that might have been me and perhaps ChatGPT.
Good. Get the help where you can.
Become one of my best friends.
Yeah.
So, you spent the first 20 years of your career at Synovus, SunTrust, and Wachovia. And I can't help but notice that all three of those banking organizations through mergers have now become Pinnacle, Truist, Wells Fargo. So regardless of that, take us through your path a little bit and talk a little bit about what you saw inside those banking organizations that made you decide to build Saltyco.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't know why every one I work for ends up merging or getting I don't know what's going on. I know why they did, but I don't think it's because of me. The irony, actually, one of my first roles out of college was with Wells Fargo Financial. So it was a financial arm of Wells Fargo. It wasn't a bank. It was like same as cash, draft checks. It was an interesting role I got right out of college, but it taught me how to sell, if you will. Like I majored in film, but I needed a job. So I started working for them. I became really good at selling. Now, I learned after about a year or two there, I didn't like what I was selling. Like it was awkward for me because it wasn't great products and I knew these people could get better products elsewhere. So I ended up having a really good friend who worked there, who went to go work for Wachovia as a banker, was telling me how well he was doing, candidly how much money he was making. And I said, great, sign me up. And then I left that role. I actually left as a manager and went to go be a financial specialist with Wachovia. Wachovia taught me how to actually build relationships. So that was the grounding one there. I learned how to communicate. I learned how to the different solutions that banks offered, and I got really good at that. But I was doing it the right way for the right people, the right products, the right solutions. And then I kind of had to decide whether I wanted to stay as a producer or whether I wanted to go as a leadership route. And I went the leadership route. So I got a role also there that then I was leading lending for like 80 bankers. That was great because no one reported to me, which means I had to learn how to lead through influence before I ever had a team reporting to me, which is great because then when I then left Wachovia and went over to SunTrust, I just took that leadership mentality with me running 11 branches for them. So now I learned how to teach people how to communicate. I didn't have to force anyone to do anything. I knew how to lead through influence, serve the team. That served me really well at SunTrust. And once again, really good run at SunTrust. So went from an area manager to a larger area manager, helped build their premier banking group, and I ran it for Georgia and Florida, ran Atlanta, 140 branches, ran half of Florida, 200 branches. And then, learned a lot through all those different stages. But when the merger got announced with BB&T, I had no intentions of moving. So then there was an opportunity to kind of build a wealth team for Synovus and then came over and just kind of deployed that, with the Synovus group as well. And then that led to my last role with them, which was really just anything they needed done on the strategy execution side. Just throw me in, get involved, wholesale, wealth, commercial. All of that being said, each of those little moments was pockets of learning about leadership, about engaging with clients and all of that kind of led to, okay, I think I've got enough credibility. I've got enough war stories where I can now build and lead Saltyco in a way that has a lot of credibility, a lot of experience, and now I can just deploy all that knowledge into all the different engagements and partnerships I get to build by running this.
Yeah. So at what point did you make the decision that you were going to pivot and go out on your own and start Saltyco?
Yeah. So I always had like the itch to go do something else. Just the first ones never worked. They're all like Shark Tank ideas. They never actually panned out, and I think I think right around 2020 or so started, and it was approved, but I started while I was still working full time. I started engaging with some organizations, which might get to the end around videos. So like obviously one thing I did as a leader is I made videos pretty consistently with my team. I had, at one point I had up to 1,000 people reporting to me. Quickest way to get a team engaged, make a video, land a message, get them fired up, motivated, accountable, drop it. Being a film major, all I needed was my phone and an editing software, and I could do it in 4 minutes. Early on with Saltyco, it was just this idea of taking an expertise I had and then pitching it as a product. And that's what I did early on. So my first couple clients literally just hired me to teach them how to make really good videos for their team. That was it. But what that did was it's got me involved in their strategy. It got me involved in what was important to them. It got me involved in what they were trying to get their teams to go accomplish. And after enough of those conversations took root and started building a bit of a runway, I realized all the other expertise I had, which was sales process, coaching frameworks, leadership development, all of that, they all needed that too. So when I realized that was the big opportunity, this other one was just kind of a foot in the door. That's where I then leaned in and went full time on Saltyco because I knew that was going to be the sustainable arm. And then the video part has just it's not even a solution I offer anymore, really, because it's not necessary. I'm too involved in the bigger projects. But that was kind of that was a stepping stone. The early stuff that I needed to. Some of my earliest conversations were pitching people on that solution, but they ended up needing a lot more. We never even went with that. We ended up doing all these other things, and that's kind of led to the solid foundation that I kind of fully launched Saltyco on.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. It's amazing as I have these conversations on this podcast, whether it's treasury, banking, fintech, nobody I've spoken to ever came out of school and said, this is what I'm going to do. Another example here, filmmaking. Yeah. Did you ever think you're going to end up in banking?
No. I needed something that would actually pay bills versus just run around. And that's the thing is it's hard to, I also think it would have been hard to do this earlier because part of the expertise that I think people bring me on board is they get to tap into here. And this is only built from experiences and interactions. So I can get on a call with, it could be 100 leaders and I could take a Q&A on something we're executing. And I can almost guarantee you that 99% of the time, they're going to bring up a situation coaching a teammate. And not only do I have an answer, I have an answer that's actually rooted in realistic application. Oh, I've had that conversation. Here's how it went. Here's how I would approach it. Here's how I drive accountability. Those things, like they're in here. I just have to pull them out. That had to come from time and experience. If I would come out of school trying to do this, I would have no credibility to run it off of.
Yep, exactly. Well, experience is the great differentiator. I think it gets harder as we get older, though, because there's almost such a thing as being too experienced.
Yeah, I get it.
So with what you've brought together under Saltyco, you've got growth, advisory, talent, coaching. Why do those all belong together instead of being treated as separate problems that need being solved for?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, early on, it was just Saltyco. And then I realized there was a need on the talent side. So I actually launched what was called Cloud's Talent Group, which is the talent side, and realized there was no need to have separation there because at the end of the day, everything fell under conversations I was having. So what I decided to do is kind of just rebrand it and split it up into growth, talent, advisory, meaning a majority of engagements I have right now are all growth focused. So we're building sales process. We're building, experiences for clients or members. We're building coaching frameworks that support it. We're building leadership development stuff and deploying. And that's all growth for members, growth for clients, growth for teammates, growth for the org, all that good stuff. And thankfully, most are tied directly to revenue, which is a good thing to be tied to. Then the talent piece came up out of just conversations. I was on too many calls with CEOs and C-suite, and they're talking, and this might be a whole lot more here that I'll eventually talk more about. But on the talent side, they didn't like the way it was working. They didn't like the system. They felt it was broken. There's a good chance a lot of folks out there that are in this space aren't great at it and just are actually awful. So from a client experience, from an applicant experience, and I'm certainly not perfect, but I knew I had an edge there. So I was able to come in pretty reasonably and in a very quick and efficient way, just start showing up and adding value there. So the talent thing became right now I have like 6 or 7 openings on just that side, on the side hustle with the talent
Great.
side. So that's why it stopped becoming a side hustle and became just a core strategy of what I do. And then the advisory one, honestly, I've toyed with that. I would put my executive coaching work under advisory. I don't really promote it very much. I don't get online and talk about it, but I am coaching 7 to 8 different executives right as we speak now. It all comes word of mouth. It's not like I'm the executive coach and I'm going to life coach. Like I've never done that. That's the advisory side of my world because I'm just kind of giving advice and coaching. Ultimately, would there be an option when someone would hire me just to advise them? Sure. I also feel like that feels kind of sneaky. Like there's a lot of consulting firms that just get paid for advice, but I actually care about execution. So I even debated not including the advisory thing, but sometimes orgs might just need me to like offer some expertise and some direction, and then they pull me in. I want to be part of the execution. I don't want to just throw ideas out there. I want to see them come to life. And that's really kind of the core of what we are, is kind of those 3 arms.
That's really amazing. So as you're doing more and more in the talent side and people kind of out there in the industry are hearing that you've got your hand in it, are you finding that more folks are coming directly to you to say, hey, I'm out there, I'm looking, I want you to know who I am. So you have something that's appropriate and you've got me on your list?
Yeah. Yeah. It's both. I mean, this, how do I say it so that sound like a jerk? I mean, that side, the applicant side, it's weird for me because I've been told multiple times, like offer a solution to them, like offer a product or a service. I feel weird offering a product or service for someone who's looking for a role because I'm like, well, they're looking for a role. So what am I going to like? I mean, that just feels weird for me. So I haven't fully done that. I've done my best to be supportive there, but also I can't jump on a call every time someone's looking for something because I don't have enough roles, right? It's just, I got to manage my time and be protective of it. So, but I do have multiple, but once again, I can't own it. So like I connect, hey, look for opportunities. I just talked to a colleague recently, a colleague from a couple of years ago, almost a decade ago, was looking for something. And, I was like, I'm not going to go look for roles for you because I shouldn't, but go look and send them to me. And then I will try and connect you if I can, and to the point where I've even reached out to hiring managers, C-suite hiring managers, and I've sent them DMs and I'm like, hey, I got someone you should probably talk to for this opening. And they're like, we're not dealing with recruiters. And that was it. And I was like, wait, what is that? I don't want to get paid. I'm literally just trying to send you a human being, maybe talk to them. Never got a response from this person. So like, I'm like, that's broken too. That side of it's broken.
That's
And
highly broken.
That's literally insane. And I'm like, I literally want no money. I just have a human who could be great at this job and it'll save you money. So can you just talk to him? So there's that part of it. So I do have like a group of folks that are just kind of like pending at all times that I'm just doing what I can to help connect the dots, even if it's not an opening I have. It's one that I do think there's a pay it forward element there that does work. I have tangible receipts that it will work. It's just not being selective, but just being strategic on how I approach that part of it.
Makes a lot of sense. I realize that as we're having this conversation, there's someone that I want to introduce you to,
Sure.
who is not a recruiter, but he's
Yeah.
been sitting in this intersection between banking and fintech for 20 years,
Yep.
and he has placed, without earning a nickel, close to 200 people over the years because
Yeah.
he's just got all these relationships, knows what's going on out there,
Yeah.
and could actually be a source for you as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be
Anyway.
great.
So let's get back to this a little bit. In some of the advisory work that hits around transformation, lot of and it's not limited to banks, but certainly
Sure.
the banks, credit unions talk a lot about transformation, but very few of them seem to be able to figure out how to change.
Yeah.
What's broken there that prevents organizations that seemingly want to transform from being able to
Yeah.
actually do it?
Yeah. I mean, this feels like an overly simplified answer, but it's not. I think it will always sit in leadership. That's it. It will always come down to effective or ineffective leadership. Meaning you could build the fanciest transformational strategy in the world, but we all know it will not work unless leaders reinforce it and coach to it. And that's it. That's literally, it sounds overly simple because it is, and that's the hard part. It could be the smallest transformation of how, and I've even seen it personally, how I teach teams to engage with a member or a client. It's something new. It's different. It's human. It's intentional. It's new and it's different. It has always worked when the leaders show up to support, reinforce, and coach to it, and even lean into awkward conversations. And it has only not worked when leaders have chose not to, when they've opted out, when they've said they're going to let the inmates run the asylum, do whatever they want. It's like, really? Like, okay, it won't work. And actually, even when I'm pitching and trying to engage in new relationships, specs are like, well, how would this not work? And I said, it will not work if you give your leaders a pass to drive the accountability behind it. It will not work. And when I build stuff, I've never once built a sales process and that's it. And I built it and I've handed it over. I'm like, best of luck. It has always been attached to a coaching framework, meaning I won't engage with a partner and just roll out a sales process. It will always be a process and a coaching framework, because I could come deliver it. I could do it in a sensational way that everyone would be like, their minds are blown. They're like, want to be best friends. That doesn't mean anything. Because in 4 weeks, when things get a little hectic and they forget to do it or they stop doing it or it gets awkward, I'm not there. I'm not there. And like, my really great training is all old news. Who will be there is the coach or the leader who's like, hey, you could do this. Watch me do it again so you don't forget. And then I want to see. That's the only way it sticks. And that's at the highest level of transformation, whether it's us having to teach teammates to work with clients on new technology. There still needs to be coaches that support that, those blocking and tackling the choreography. So it will always and continue to lay on great or lack thereof leadership.
I want to go back to something you mentioned. You talked about those awkward conversations.
Yep.
Are you finding in the world that we're living in today in 2026 that there is a need for more of those conversations than ever before? Is that sort of been even over time?
I think it's been even over time. The only difference I'd say now is it might seem like they're needed more because they just haven't been happening. Like, it's always, I always say there's always a lot of awesome on the other side of awkward, right? So like some of my most awkward coaching conversations led to like really great breakthroughs with teammates, but I had to like lean in and say, unless you're willing to change here and here, you're probably never going to cut it in this role. And that's not a great thing to tell someone unless you actually care about their growth and development. And then you do tell them that. And then they decide they're going to be different. They're going to change. And I've got receipts on those. I've got people I can name specifically who I sat down, who people told me this person is not worth it. They're not going to do well. And I'm like, well, let me find out. I lean in, I spend some time, I do some coaching, I do some role modeling. They still choose not to change. And then I sit them and look them in the eye and I said, it's been 3 months. I've been in it with you. You are still letting all of this happen under your nose. You're not doing anything about it. Unless that changes, you won't be successful. So make a choice. And I've had someone come back and say, I'm going to change. And I'm like, please change. Prove me wrong. And then they may or may not be running 1,500 branches for a huge organization now, right? Awkward can lead to it, right?
Right.
And I've got dozens of those. They've always needed to be happening. It just might seem more prevalent now because, we've got more things going on, or we've avoided it, or even the teams we're leading are different generations. They still deserve those conversations, those intentional human-centered conversations that just aren't happening. And leaders have to lean in and have those.
Are you finding that leaders are shying away any more today than they have, or they're okay? Good.
No, listen, it's the same. Accountability is the hardest aspect of leadership. It's one of the simplest things if you figure it out, but it's one of the hardest ones that people just don't like doing because it's all branded incorrectly and it's all misbranded. So I don't think anything's ever changed. I think it's just as prevalent now as it could have been 10 years ago.
Got it. Relationship building gets talked about constantly in the banking and credit union worlds.
Yep.
I see it an awful lot in the fintech world as well. What separates teams that genuinely build on relationships versus just kind of going through the motions of it?
Yeah. Well, I think what I've found is when there is not a clear reason why we're doing what we're doing, and that reason isn't supported by leaders shouting it to the mountains, then we fall into a check the box, just doing it because we got to do it mentality, or just not doing it at all, which are both kind of the same thing. Where it actually works is when leaders are like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. And honestly, a lot of what we build at Saltico is just that. It is understanding why in the world would we even want to grow relationships? And let's figure that out. And there's only so many answers to that. I don't know if a bank credit union says like, well, we're different. Sure. But like you're still kind of doing the same thing. It's
Hmm.
just the difference is how clear is that compelling mission and vision for your team to go run through a wall to go do it. So that's what I try and find and capture and then bring to the team to say, we already said this is why you're here. I'm just showing you what it looks like actually executed in engaging with another human being to help them. And we make that very, very clear. And once that's clear, two things. One, it's a whole lot easier for the teammate to say, well, this is what success means. So their likely to do it goes up. And then two, if they're unwilling to do that, it's a lot clearer for the leader to know what to hold them accountable to, which then helps them do it. And both of those things get us far away from check the box and a lot closer to actually building genuine relationships. But it still goes back to what I just said earlier, like it still relies on the leader. So I will always quadruple down on that because it'll always validate why we need leaders, and it'll always reinforce why leaders can impact their teams, because it's still going to be that's the tipping point. That'll always be the tilt factor.
Got it. So let's turn to a topic that I often time how long into a conversation I get to this. So we're
Yeah,
about 21 minutes into it. I'm going to ask you about AI. So AI has become transformative and it's out there. Almost everybody is at least touching it, playing with it practically on a
sure.
daily basis. How are you seeing that help leaders in their roles with what they're doing? Is it becoming an excuse to avoid some of the people issues that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, I only see it at I feel like I see it at such a small scale, right? And part of it's because of where I'm at. I haven't seen it like as an excuse yet. I've seen it as, I don't know, I see it potentially be more of a distractor than anything. Like it can distract you from actually having the conversations. I'll still go back to something I use a lot. I haven't branded it or trademarked it yet, but it's I'm very much like a guardrails guy. So I still think that fits. Like with teams, you don't want to overly prescribe things to them. Still give them guardrails, just enough where they can flex left and right. But if they hit the edge, they don't roll off the hill and then there's an explosion and they're all dead. Right? It's like, oh man, I hit the guardrail. That's why they're there. I think it's the same with this. It's to a certain extent leverage it if it helps with efficiency, helps give you more clarity. If it could take data and synthesize it and then give you direction, great. Now go be a human and leverage that direction. So I think it's giving us insights, and I think it just creates guardrails for us to operate within versus the full runway, the full vision, the full direction, blindly trusting it, running 100 miles per hour forward. That's dangerous. I still think the human application of it is where we'd see a difference.
Are you seeing with the executive leaders you're talking to these days that they're just in a quandary as to how to use it, deploy it in their organizations?
No, and I don't know if it's because a lot of times the area I'm spending time in is in that, 500 million to 15 billion range. And that
Hmm.
range, it's like, when it is being thought of, it's very much going to be thought of in the CIO, CTO space or on the lending side where we're just trying to get smarter for decision making. And it hasn't really needed to be applied to these other areas yet. So it's not taking up a ton of conversations. I mean, even just coaching conversations, I'm not spending a lot of the time talking about that. I don't know if I should be. Maybe that's my internal fight against it a little bit of just being like, no, I don't know if I'm going to fight. I don't know if I'm going to, I'm still in, part of it's probably I'm still in that phase of whether or not I'm fully there or wanting to be. Until I decide that I'm ready to be, I'm not going to lean into it as much as I should.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. Kind of dodging it, but also being honest.
Yeah, no, I've found in my upbringing, I'll say, came through the technology ranks initially before I got into treasury and banking. So I've had a
Sure.
natural curiosity with all of it. Hasn't taken me far along enough to get into things like vibe coding and some of the other
Sure.
things. But I do find that the more that I use these tools, the more that I use these tools, and
Yes. Yeah.
it's I won't say that it's necessarily addictive, but
Sure.
I find that it's just incredibly helpful to
Yes.
getting the basics done. Sort of like with writer's block, I
Yeah.
find it just unlocks a lot of things for me, allows me to then do the thinking I need to do with a little bit of a head start.
Yeah, of course. You can now apply a different level to it. It's very, I mean, I spent a little bit, I spend probably more time in Claude than anything right now. And that gives me a very good tactical, like organizational. And then I just go in and I just start picking it apart and making it very personalized to what I need it to be. But that basic foundation easily saves me time, a lot of
Yep.
time.
So let's talk a little bit about some leadership behaviors. Any that you think are badly underrated right now, but have a real outsized impact on culture and execution?
Yeah, I mean, it's once again, I would love to bring all these very like mind blowing realizations to anyone, but it is the biggest impact, and doesn't need to be all the time, is leaders who are just simply present watching the game. That's it. Like whatever the game is, it could be anything. Like, well, that doesn't apply to me because I'm the chief operations officer for this big org. Okay, cool. But there's still places where your team is playing a game and they're having to lead or deliver or execute. So are you watching that ever? And obviously a lot of my brain and a lot of my expertise, a lot of my time is spent with teams and leaders who are running, human beings who are engaging. So whether it's, commercial lenders or bankers engaging with clients or prospects, or teammates engaging with members or clients, my brain goes there a lot. And all of those people are playing games during the day. So like, are you watching it? You want to know how it's going? Like go. It's the same reason why even when I first took on the role in Atlanta, I had 140 branches and I could read all the reports in the world and all the insights and then make decisions. Or I could just say, forget it. And I just got out in the branches. I even moved my office to a branch because I was just like, I got to watch how we're playing. I was actually given an office in downtown Atlanta on like the 33rd floor. And I told my boss, I was like, I don't want that office. Like, I don't even want it. And they had to put on my business card for political reasons. But I really just for the first 6 months, because they were like, well, you have to sit here. And I'm like, I don't, and I won't. So I had like a nameplate in a blank office, but my real office was in the suburbs, like in a branch, because I could watch how the game was being played. And if I was doing that, then none of my district managers could tell me they weren't going to do it. Because it's like, well, if I'm doing it, why aren't you doing it? Like, role model for them what you want them to do. So those two ideas, I think, give significant impact to the organization. Because when you do it, you now take away any excuse that your leader won't do it. It's like if someone's like, oh, well, my managers won't go observe and role model. I'm like, when was the last time you observed and role modeled? And they're like, what? I'm like, there you go. Second you go in there and do it first, they have no excuse to not do it. So that's where I'm always pushing leaders and teams, is to spend more time watching it, because you can see if their jump shots off, you can see if they're dropping their shoulder, you can see if they're not following through. You can't see that from reports. And even, I may or may not have interviewed for a district manager job when I was running 11 branches in Atlanta. I think I was interviewing for a district manager job. They took those away eventually, where I would have run like 5 area managers. I remember talking to the retail executive and they said, how would you spend time in this role? I said, I'd be out in market with my area managers, like coaching. And they're like, wrong. You run reports, you get on calls, you lead the business that way. If you want to be in the field the whole time, this isn't the right role for you. I said, well, it's not. I'm out. And like, I took my name out of the hat. 3 years later, I had that person's job. Like, I don't even know what you want. I mean, I don't even know what to say there. Like, that's just 3 years later, because I knew that's where it would work, and they were underperforming. Another leader came, still underperforming. Finally, they brought me to take this team that was in Atlanta, underperforming, and then they became the top division of the company. Watch the game.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So I didn't plan to talk about this, but it strikes me that it's probably worth asking you about your view around remote work in banking. And has that helped organizations? Is it hurtful? Does it really depend on what part of the organization people are in?
Yep.
What's your view on remote work and the whole move to return to office?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think the last point is what hits me the most. I think it depends on where you sit, and it depends on what you're doing, because once again, everyone has their own practicality of what success looks like. So you can watch that and you could view that remotely, and you could do that from afar. And because on the other side, there's not a reason just to check the box, just to check the box. So, but it's very difficult to be in that remote role if you are a leader of people that are human face interaction contact. Like I've seen very effective people run remote teams. I've seen very ineffective people run remote teams. And I've seen people in person be really effective and people in person be very ineffective. So it's still, I hate saying it. It's going to sound like the same thing over and over again. It's still going to be, is that leader paying attention? Are they having those conversations? Are they leaning into where they need to be leaning into? Are they coaching where they need to be coaching? Because it's deployable remote, not remote. This market, this business, it's still Effective leaders will be present and understand and coach to it and get success from their team. And ineffective leaders, whether remote or not, will still be ineffective because they're skipping routines and they're not providing clarity and they're frankly not doing a great job leading.
Right. So sort of a follow-on question there for those organizations that haven't quite figured out the balance of remote work and return to office.
Yeah.
Is there sometimes a leaning on the excuse of, well, we don't have it in the budget for our remote people to travel out to locations to be able to be with their teams or in the field, in the market? Do you see any of that or sense any of that?
I've never heard that come up. I've actually never heard that come up. It doesn't mean it doesn't.
Okay.
It's just I've never. So no, I would think it would be. It's really. I think it's more. I think it's going to be more on the justification side and both sides. One, the leader having to justify why that person needs to be here or not, and or that leader who's being asked to be able to justify why they should or why they shouldn't. And that's just a real conversation to have. Well, I have seen some that just say, that maybe went remote too long, and now they just kind of blanket. And it's more spread out like a 3-2 scenario, which at least gives people enough opportunities to say, how effective are we in these 3 days? How ineffective are we in these 2 days? And then continue to kind of litmus test it, see if it's the right move.
Got it. So let's do some prognosticating here. If we were to look out the next 3 to 5 years, and I realize as we get to 5 years, the way time moves today, 5 years is a long time.
Terrifying.
So let's say 3 years. What will separate the institutions that actually grow from the ones that keep talking about transformation and never quite transform and kind of have their growth stalled?
What do you think I'm going to say?
Well, I think it's going to come back down to leadership.
Yeah. No, it's 100% going to be. Yeah, I mean I think that's the change because and that's why even like the 3 to 5, great. Okay, sure, it could be 1 to 3 to 5. It doesn't matter because if something changes in 9 months or 18 months or 24 months, differentiator is something's changing. Did a leader grasp that change? Did they say, hey, change is happening. Let me clarify it for you. Let me boil it down to where it's simplistic and executable. Here you go. And we're going to go do it together. And then we go do it together and we grow. And then 6 months later, things shift and they go, oh, things are shifting. Now we're here. This is what this means now. And this is where we go spend time. And that flexing, that's the constant, right? So no matter what happens down the road, that's the differentiator is that. And there will be plenty of orgs that those leaders skip that part, crap job of communicating it, don't instill that in their teams, can't make it clear. And I think that ends up creating disastrous results. I think the ones, and I do think there's some orgs that might grow and do a really good job. And it might be because they're just getting pounded all the time and it's constant, it's nonstop. Sure. Mm-hmm. I do think there's a sustainability part there that will eventually trail off. I've seen plenty of leaders and previous peers that have just led their team with an iron fist and it's worked for a period of time. And then it drops off because it's not sustainable. So I'm like, oh, have your temporary glory. And then I can't wait to watch it all crash and burn, which it always does. So always does, and I could, once again, I go back to receipts a lot. I get receipts, every single one of them, crash and burn, crash and burn. So I just kind of played the long game and stayed in it. That is going to be the differentiator. That's why leadership will still matter significantly, because if you have a team that's prepared to recognize those, and they should, because you're the leader that tells them, and then your leader should tell you, pull them together, clarify what's going on. Here's what success looks like now. Here's what changes. Oh, you're uncomfortable here? I'll be there with you to show you how to get through that discomfort. Oh, you're good? Good. Then I'll just keep an eye, guardrails. It's that deployment. It sounds simple because it is, but it's really hard to do.
I think you have a knack for being able to boil it down to the simplicity, but I think a lot harder on the receiving end for those people that are struggling with those very things.
Yeah, it is. It is. But I also think sometimes it's easier for us to make it complicated because then we can avoid it.
Well said. So a couple of last questions for you. I've certainly, since the time that we worked together and I saw you head off and start Saltico, I've noticed on your website, on your LinkedIn posts, you use all these plus signs. In fact, you did that at Synovus too, and little carrot symbols and other things as a way to be a little bit different. And I certainly see where it sets you apart. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, that's funny. I don't even know, honestly, but when I saw that, I was like, let me think through it. I think the plus is kind of it's one, I think it made things quicker. It kind of felt more actionable. I think there's also a faith angle there that just kind of reminds me. It's like a constant reminder as I'm like putting things in, but it also is like feels a little more action oriented because it's just plus. It's like there's more to come. It's more exciting than just and. And then I think the little carrot one, I think it's just this reminder. It's like this elevation, like this elevate reminder where it's just instead of a bullet point, which is this very plain and just kind of like or a dash, it's like we can raise it up a little bit. Like we can level this up a little bit. So everything, it's always, and I don't think I've subconsciously did it, but that's just kind of stuck. I'd much rather put that little arrow pointing up than an asterisk because I feel like it just gives me a little bit, it almost like raises expectations before you've even read what I have after on the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just go out and say it. I'm a fan of the way you do it. I
Good.
think it is a differentiator, and I think it shows that you think a little bit differently than everybody else, which I think is a competitive advantage.
Gmail does not like it. Gmail wants to always AI fix what I write in emails, and it always wants to replace that with and I have to tell it no every time.
Wow. The tools have gotten too smart, which means that they're actually stupid.
Fighting the system. I'm fighting the system, even on email.
So the other thing you do, and I even see with the way you're is where, while this podcast will be audio only for the audience, you and I are getting to talk in real time video.
Yeah.
You're very close to the screen, you're, leaning in, but I find that, you do put a lot of video out there on LinkedIn, goes back to that time clearly in film school, I guess. Sure. But, I find your videos are, I think the best word I'd use is a little quirky, but I think that's an element that really works. And I'm just curious, is that something, that has helped you to be comfortable putting yourself out there? Because it really, again, it's a differentiator.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's just kind of happened because I actually started doing this when I was in Atlanta, and it actually started off as a podcast. I would just do an audio recording on my iPad to get the team. This is like 2014 to get the team kind of rallied around some principles. And then I realized we had the technology to be able to upload a video and embed it internally at SunTrust. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, here we go. And it was just my phone and it was iMovie and I could start doing it consistently. So I think early on, I think I had to just get comfortable doing it. I mean, because I never did it before. Now, I will say when like video, like Zoom and everything hit heavy in the 2020, like I was like, game on, been doing it for 6 years. Like I couldn't wait to jump on. And it was easy for me because I was used to engaging audiences for years through video. And I think for me, it was a few things. Number one, it made my job a little bit more fun than just being boring. So I had to like make a video each week. I think for me, because I had such a large team, I needed to make sure my message was clear and you couldn't misunderstand it. I wasn't on that call. Oh, I didn't read that in the email. It's like, I made a freaking video. I was very clear. Like, and if you didn't understand it, you can go watch it again. You can watch it 100 times for all I care. But let me get the message out there. So it was getting clarity of the message. And then honestly, it was just trying to give a little extra something to the team. Like they just maybe needed a little pick me up and I could bring that via video to them. And at the end of the day, it was also an accountability tool. So when I could make a video and it was really important and I could be out in the market a week or two later with a leader and I could be sitting in front of a branch manager and they're like, no, we're not doing that. I don't know where we would have done that. I've never heard that before. I was like, oh, you haven't? Huh. Pretty sure I did a video 2 weeks ago. Let me pull it up and let's watch it together again. And I'd have them watch it. And it was literally like, then they had to literally say, oh, I just didn't watch your video because I didn't care. And I was like, good to know. It was actually an accountability tool. Everyone thought it was fun. And yes, I made it more. I mean, I jumped over boxes in slow motion. I had nice socks on. I'd always show my socks. And, there was this full circle moment where I was in market with Brad Dinsmore, who was like head of consumer, like big role, like boss's boss. And we walked into a branch 3 hours from where I lived. And this teller came screaming, running behind the teller line out at us. And I was like, here we go. I'm going to get fired. This person's going to say this guy's a maniac. And the first thing they asked is, can I see your socks? It's the first question they asked me. This teller was literally 3 weeks from retiring and worked for SunTrust for like 40 years. And they cared about my socks because they had been watching the videos. So that culture build, that team build, like it was happening every week. I dropped a video and I looked at them and I said, hey man, the videos are working. Like, don't doubt the videos. Like they're working. I think that's where it came from.
I absolutely love it. Todd Weiden, thank you for joining me here today in the Whisperer studio. This was a fun conversation.
Good. Glad to be here. Appreciate it. And glad we got to catch up a little bit.
Likewise. So that is a wrap for today, Whisperees. Do not forget to rate the show on whichever podcast service you happen to be listening to us on. Until next time on the Treasury Whisperers Talkcast podcast, this is Seth Marlowe saying bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Treasury Whisperers Talkcast podcast with Seth Marlowe. The Treasury Whisperers Talkcast podcast is produced by the Treasury Whisperer Studio and Treasury Whisperer LLC. Copyright 2025. Any rebroadcast, retransmission, or account of this podcast without the express written consent of Treasury Whisperer LLC is strictly prohibited.